Hey guys, before we get into the review, just want to let you know that it is spoiler free. You can either watch or listen to it, doesn't matter. The gameplay in the background is just going to be from the very beginning of the game where there's not really any spoilers. So yeah, thank you for watching the video. Take care. Alright, Final Fantasy 16. Just got done with the story about 5 hours or so ago. I broke it up into about like 6 or 7 categories. And I think I'll start with the story first because, you know, Final Fantasy game, obviously story's 10 out of 10. Pros, um, all the characters are pretty well put together. Side quests help flesh them out even more, as well as the world itself. As the MSQ progresses, the world changes and adapts to it, and you discover that through the side quests. Don't really have too much to complain about there. Voice acting was on point. The way they talk to each other in the cutscenes and support each other seems like they're having like real, genuine conversations that people would have. I know in previous Final Fantasy games, like 8, for is a pretty good example of that. The situations were really awkward with that characters were in. It was actually, I mean, 8 might not be the best example, but I mean, whatever. They all have very unique traits. Really separates themselves from each other. Main characters are all different from each other. I just liked a couple of the characters that I don't think I was supposed to. There's one. I'm trying not to keep this. I'm trying to keep this spoiler free. So there's one in particular that always gave me an attitude anytime I talk to her. I'm not trying to spoil it, but like you would know who I'm talking about if you played the game. The other one, they felt super useless all the time. If that makes any sense. They always felt like I always felt like they were in trouble, and they never really provided anything to the group, except for like maybe a couple times. So I never really liked those two characters very much. That's not a reason why I'm scoring it the way I am, but yeah, I just never really connected with them very much. Even after doing the side quests, I still never really connected with them. The storyline's very mature for a Final Fantasy game. There's nudity, there's sex, there's implied rape. I think the older FF games, like, they did have mature themes, but it's kind of hard to really express that through the style and the graphics at the time. It made it harder to like visualize what was actually going on and how serious the situations were. Graphics today, I feel like make it easier to tell what exactly is going on, and it makes storytelling much easier. Hits most of the Final Fantasy themes like icons, summons, spells, you know, the signature spell names like Blizzaga and Flare, you know, just examples off the top of my head. Chocobos, Moogles, you know, the names of the gear are pretty iconic. The enemy types, all that kind of stuff. Huge tip during cutscenes, and it tells you this in game too. Hit pause pretty much immediately, like during the cutscenes in the very beginning of the game, and hit the touchpad button, and it's going to bring up this screen that gives you like a summary of the lore, like so far, and like locations and stuff like that, and characters and who they are and what they do. You should use that feature as much as possible because they dump a lot of lore on you very quickly, and it's very easy to get confused if you don't use that feature. I think it's called ATL. I think that's what it's called, and I'm pretty sure they introduced it to you pretty early on in the story. So yeah, story 10 out of 10. Final Fantasy story, they're always great. I did have 2 complaints about. I mean, it's not so much about the story, but more like the pacing. It felt kind of slow at certain points. It's not so much where it was like a huge concern, but like at certain points it felt really slow. I actually did start nodding off during a couple of the cutscenes because I got so bored. Because not only was there just like cutscene after cutscene after cutscene, but they were like explaining the same things over and over and over, and it just got kind of boring. Speaking of cutscenes, this game is very heavy in cutscenes. I mean, I know if you're a Final Fantasy fan, you pretty much know that already. Like, you know, like there's gonna be a lot of cutscenes in Final Fantasy games. Like, it's just what they are, especially if you played 14. But if you're not a Final Fantasy vet and you're pretty new, get ready to be watching just as much as you're playing the game, because I honestly think this is probably one of the heaviest cutscene FF games in the franchise, if not the heaviest. I felt like I had certain sessions, gaming sessions, you know, while I was playing the game for like maybe 3 or 4 hours one day, and I think I probably spent maybe half that time watching cutscenes, and the other half actually playing the game. So if you're really not into watching cutscenes, then this game might not be for you. I mean, like, I don't know, like, it's really hard to justify. If you don't like cutscenes in games, you're just not gonna like it, to be honest with you. There's just a lot of them. I mean, if you really like a good narrative, a good story, sure, I would recommend it. But yeah, it's hard to get into if you're not used to that. Okay, so enough about that. The visuals / map, I gave 9 out of 10. I mean, again, it's Final Fantasy. The visuals, the graphics look amazing. The environments, the cutscenes are incredible. They're varied enough so that each region felt different from the other ones. The spells you cast during combat look great. They feel satisfying to press them. Especially AoE abilities. Like, AoE abilities absolutely melt mobs. The menu screen has pretty good UI. It's fairly easy to read, fairly easy to understand, and how to navigate it. I love how you could hover over on the world map on an obelisk, and you can actually see the map of that region before you actually like teleported there, because it helps during first side quests and quests in general, because each region has, like, you know, 7 or 8 obelisks that you can teleport to, and the whole region is just one big region, and then you have like little subsections of that region. So you want to know like where in that particular region to teleport to, and you can know before you actually go there. So I thought that was pretty cool. Let's see, cons. I really wish there was a mini map. Like, I really do. Like, in the top right corner would have been perfect. There was nothing there. Some areas are just so large. I found myself opening the map constantly in certain areas to check where I was. I'm the type of person that likes to check every nook and like cranny for chests. I'm sure a lot of people do. I'm sure a lot of RPG enthusiasts love doing that. And having a mini map helps with that tremendously, because I found myself constantly opening and closing the map over and over and over, especially when I was in like a town or like a village, like, and there's so many like side streets and stuff like that and little corners. Like, yeah, it was just really annoying. I mean, not so annoying where I was like frustrated by it, but it just would have been nice. The loot drops are pretty underwhelming and unsatisfying. Sometimes you do find occasional armor or weapon upgrades from a chest, but it's extremely rare. The majority of the time, you are just finding mats to craft things or mats to sell, and that's basically it. You might find an accessory every now and then again as well, but it's like 90% of the time, it's just materials. And don't even get me started on the 2 gil or 10 gil sparkles on the ground. They were like, okay, so this game has chests as usual, but there's also like these blue sparkles on the ground you'll see every now and then. And it's usually materials, again. It's usually just mats. But sometimes it'll be like 2 gil or 10 gil. And in reference, at the end of this game, I had like over 250,000 gil. So towards the end of the game, I literally just stopped caring about it and didn't even bother like picking up any of the blue shit, because it was just completely worthless to me. So yeah, so overall, visuals, map system, 9 out of 10. I mean, I had a couple complaints there, but nothing crazy like to really deduct the points. So let's talk about combat. The other really strong suit for this game. It only gets better the further you get into the game. This section might be slightly spoiler depending on like who you are and what you consider spoilers. But it's hard to explain the battle system while not saying certain things. Just know that the combat is S tier. It's very fun and rewarding. If you don't want to hear anything else, you can skip further ahead in the video. I'll have timestamps labeled, so you can skip past the combat. But I personally don't think this is really spoilery at all. Especially if you played the demo, you kind of know. you kind of know like what's coming. Basically, the more icons you beat, the more abilities you get access to, which is why the game gets better the further you get into it. I love how you can mix and match what abilities you want, and when you master them, you have even more freedom to do what you want with them. Basically, mastered abilities don't have to be tied to the icon it came from. For example, I can use Garuda's circle ability, but then use an ability from Ramu and Titan like on the same weapon if I wanted to. Like I can have one skill from all three instead of just all Garuda or all Ramu or all Titan, etc. Because you don't necessarily personally I don't like, you know, every single ability from one icon is usually not great. Usually I have like one or two good ones and then one or two bad ones, you know what I mean? So you kind of just want to mix and match them, which I think is kind of it's intended. I don't think they wanted you to just use all of Garuda or all of Ramu or all of Titan, you know what I mean? So like I said, gets better the further you go. You can play how you want. What I mean by that is I preferred the fast-paced playstyle, so I went with abilities that didn't have like a wind-up or a charge time. Like there are certain abilities that have wind-ups, then you hold the button down longer, it does more damage. Or it has charge times. Like I think Ramu's circle, like it basically you kind of go in slow motion and you have to like move your camera around to like target different enemies and stuff like that. It slowed it down, slowed the gameplay down for me. So I just went with anything that was like fast and quick, like the Phoenix is probably my go-to because I love the circle. I love dashing to every single mob and just instantly on them. Like that was my favorite part. There's different builds you can do. Like I had my build was mainly just to get them into stagger as fast as possible, and then I usually had like a bunch of hard hitting single target abilities that I could use back to back to back while they're in stagger. And towards the end of the game, I was hitting like over 100k, which is quite a lot considering I think the PlayStation like achievement is to get 50k or whatever to get the achievement, and I was doing double that towards the end of the game. So it was very, very nice to kill bosses. Dodging enemy attacks while you have dodging enemy attacks feels great, but when you have this accessory on, it makes it feel even better. So when you dodge an attack, it's called you can dodge an attack normally, but it's also called a precision dodge when you dodge pretty much at the exact moment the guy was going to hit you. And if you have this accessory on, it slows you down and then gives you an attack buff. So like as you're dodging your camera, it's like like a Matrix thing, you know what I mean? I don't know. It looks cool. I thought it looked cool. So and I always wore that trinket just because of the feeling you got when you dodge something perfectly. It just felt awesome. And plus you got like increased attack power for like, you know, a few seconds. I actually don't know how long it was, but I think it was a few seconds. And I had that pretty much on almost the entire game until towards the end when I started getting accessories that were just like you just had to wear them because they were just so overpowered. So, but then when I took it off, it felt really bad because I wasn't getting the slow-mo anymore. It felt bad. There's many boss fights. This could be a pro or a con, but I find it a positive because the only challenging fights in this game are the bosses. I can see why people find this con if all you're doing is fighting boss after boss after boss, but the combat in this game is very easy. So, except for even most of the bosses are pretty easy. So, however, there's one boss in particular I think I clocked it being like roughly 20 or 25 minutes long. Despite the length, it is one of the best boss fights I've ever experienced in any game, ever. If you've played the game, you will know which one I'm talking about. I can't really elaborate anymore on it, but if I could do that fight again in New Game Plus, I would. Which I think you can, but I don't know if I'm gonna do New Game Plus to be honest. It is an experience. It is crazy. It is so over the top. It is so like flashy. It's so cinematic. It's really fun. It's a really fun fight. But yeah, I mean there are other fights kind of like that, but this one in particular was probably the most fun for sure. Anyway, so combat overall good, 9 out of 10, but I have a couple issues with it. Most of the battles are they're just too easy. This may be a pro or con depending on who you are, but I only died 2 times during my playthrough. The first time was to an S rank hunt that was level 50, that I was able to do at 37, level 37. Which, by the way, I don't understand why they did this. This was the only S rank that was level 50, and you get more S ranks after this one, but they were all like level 35 to 45, if I remember right. So I found it really weird that I was given a level 50 at my level, but all the other S ranks after this were much easier. So anyway, fighting this thing when I was under leveled made it challenging. The second time I died was during the second to last boss. No spoilers, so that's all I will say. But the bottom line is, the combat is very forgiving. Open world combat is a joke for the most part. The enemies will just huddle around each other and watch as you take them out one by one. It's kind of reminds me of like an action movie where all the bad guys attack the good guy one at a time. That's basically what it's like in the open world combat, not gonna lie. The bosses are a bit more challenging, but I never really felt in danger of dying to pretty much any of them. Except for like the last boss, maybe the last boss was the most challenging, as it should be, and that one I also just popped everything because I knew it was the last boss, so I just pretty much popped every potion I had. This might be a pro, but I found this to be a con. I'm not a fan of quick time events. Like if they're done occasionally or like sporadically, it's fine, but I've never seen so many quick time events in an FF game before. Like, I'm opening a door, quick time event. Pushing a gate, quick time event. Boss fight, quick time event. Cutscene, quick time event. I was like, oh my god, like, they're not hard. It's literally just hitting one button or mashing one button and you're done. Like, to me, it's just unnecessary. It doesn't really add anything to me. It kind of detracts from the experience, to be honest with you. I mean, that's just a minor thing. I know some people like it, some people don't, but you know, I still give combat 9 out of 10. The only reason I give it 10/10 because I felt most, if not all, I felt like 95% of the fights were too easy. All right, music. I mean, 10 out of 10. It's gonna be. There's really not much to say here because it's Final Fantasy and Soken is just a legend. Like the guy makes the best music in the video games. Period. I find myself humming the battle music like when I'm not playing the game. It is extremely catchy. There are many different battle themes, but the one where you engage, where you like do a hunt and you engage the mark, and the music starts playing is probably my favorite by far. I don't know the official name for it, but you hear it. You also don't hear, you hear it played in other fights too, not just marks, not just hunts. But I remember it the most from doing hunts. I don't think there's ever been an FF game where the music wasn't good. It's just to be expected. It's S tier, and yeah, no different. 10 out of 10. So you might be thinking, Zeke, you giving everything a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 so far? Why don't you think this is a game of the year? Well, this is where the game for me heavily falls off. Okay, the gearing and party system and the stats are pretty much non-existent in this game. While writing up these notes, I got to this part and I sat here for like 5 minutes trying to think up pros for the gearing system, but I honestly can't think of any. I really think they dropped the ball hard on this system. It is basically a non-factor. The gearing is so saturated, it seemed to be forgotten about. What I mean by that is, like, let's say you craft the weapon, it's a big upgrade and you're excited and all that. Then you go do a quest for the MSQ, and at the end of that quest, you get a notification saying, hey, you have a new recipe for a weapon. So then you go check it out, and guess what? It's slightly better than your current one. So you make that one, and then the cycle repeats. You go do a quest, hey, you got a new weapon, you got new armor, and you're just constantly upgrading gear. And it's like slightly better, maybe like 1 or 2 attack better, 5 health, you know? And to me, that just makes the whole system meaningless. Makes it pointless. My bags are literally littered with weapons and armor that I barely used. Some things I crafted I never even got a chance to use. There's one sword in particular. It's very late in the game. It's a very recognizable one too. And I crafted it and I thought, wow, like people who know this sword know like it's a very good sword in other games. So like you would think, hey, you won't be replacing this for you probably won't be replacing this for quite a long time. But then I think I replaced it about maybe 20 or 30 minutes later. I did like I think 1 or 2 quests, and then I had I got a recipe for something else, and it was better. And I was kind of sad because this weapon is like usually the end all, like one of the top tier weapons in other FF games, and I literally just replaced it in like a couple side quests. So yeah, I was extremely disappointed in the gearing system because it's nothing. The stats again, you only have 4 stats. You have HP, attack, defense, and stagger, and that's it. But I mean, you don't really have to pay attention to any of it. Like there's no like there's no spirit, there's no intellect, there's no stuff like that. Like I don't know, man. Like I guess only playing one character, you don't really need all those stats. So I guess it makes sense in that sense. But again, that's the other thing I hate. There is just no party system at all. You control the main character, and that's it. And that's a real shame because a big part of the RPGs for me is gearing out the other characters, swapping them around, making somebody like a tank or a caster or a healer or a melee. You know what I mean? Like I like doing stuff like that, and that's pretty much that just doesn't exist in this game. The party member, you do get party members, but they're completely NPCs. They just do their own thing, and you can't order them to do anything. Nothing. You do, slight spoiler, you do have a dog companion that you get that you can give like basic orders to, but it's nowhere near like Final Fantasy VII like remake, like where you can like issue orders to your team while you're like, it's nothing like that. So yeah, extremely disappointed with the gearing system, the party system, the stats. Like I'm giving that all like a 3 out of 10. Like it's just like that's so many RPG elements missing that it's hard for me to just overlook that, because yeah, they've already taken a lot of RPG elements away over the years. Like this is just more RPG stuff gone. This is more like an action, I don't know, action combat game more than an action RPG to me. Moving on, questing. I give it like a 7 out of 10. It took me like a little under 60 hours to finish the game. I did every side quest. I did every hunt. I didn't really mess with much else. To be honest, it felt a little long. Like not too much longer, but it's like a little bit. Like I really wish the game was like 50 hours, including side quests and hunts. Personally, when I was getting closer to the end of the game, they just started dumping side quests on me. Like hours and hours of side quests. When I got to this point, I was really tempted to just ignore them and just finish the game because I really just wanted to finish the game. But every time I returned from doing 4 or 5 side quests, there'd be another round waiting for me. And I'm like, well, I'm this far, I just have to finish them out. Now, you could do the MSQ and just ignore them, but if you do that, you're missing out on a ton of rewards that make the experience way more enjoyable. There's something called a Renown system in this game, which seems to be a popular buzzword nowadays if you play WoW or Diablo, because World of Warcraft uses Renown, Diablo 4 uses Renown, and they're basically all the same systems. It's basically like you do all the hunts and side quests, they give you some Renown, and if you keep doing it, you get rewards for doing Renown, for getting Renown. And there's like a certain checkpoint, like get 400 Renown, you get this, and this. Get 600 Renown, you get like mats, you get ability points, you get gear, you get accessories, you get orchestrian scrolls, whatever the fuck they're called. So you really don't want to skip out on it. Unfortunately, the beginning of the side quests are like extremely dull and boring. Most of them are just fetch quests, and they stayed like that for quite a while too. They eventually get better, but man, it really sucks at the start. Like it is really hard to keep doing them. It's I remember the first few were just like, go give food to these 3 people, and then you do a couple quests and you come back, they're like, okay, go give food to these 3 people, and then they're like, okay, go give food to these 3. I'm like, oh my god, dude, like I was I was like I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's the beginning of the game. It's the beginning of the game. Don't worry, it'll probably get easier. It'll probably get better. I mean, it did, but it just took a long time for them to actually like have some substance to them. So anyway, yeah, questing 7 out of 10. I mean, MSQ really carries this category. The side quests could be better, but the MSQ is just great, obviously. So, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I had some miscellaneous things here. The guild in the game is basically pointless. I mean, not pointless, but like it's mainly meant to buy music discs and like accessories and stuff like that. Very rarely did I ever have to buy healing items or potions because, like I said, the combat is so easy, and you also commonly find healing potions throughout the open world while you're leveling anyway. So you don't really actually like buy them too often. And even when you do, it's like 100 or 200 per potion, so it's like really cheap. But I do like how if you find potions in the open world and you're already like capped out, they'll just heal you instead of just leaving them on the ground or whatever because your inventory is full. They'll just heal you instead. If you're already full health, then it tries to heal you anyway, and it's just gone. So I thought that was pretty neat. I thought the unlocks for certain features in the game should have come in sooner. I think I was like halfway through the game, and the game was still introducing me to new game mechanics or activities, which I thought was a bit weird, introducing stuff like that so late into the game that were kind of like integral to the game. Like I think I got hunts and renown like super late, maybe like halfway through the game or something like that. So, aerial combat, I really hate it. I hate it a lot. There are a few fights in the game where you're in the air like the entire time, and it's very hard for me to see what the enemy is doing because the game is like super flashy and super like cinematic. So it made it extremely hard for me to see like what the enemy was doing, what was coming at me, where I needed to dodge. But I'm just really glad the combat's so easy that even if you do get hit like 100 times, you can heal, and even if you don't know what the hell's going on, you should still be fine. Like I never died, even though I know I got hit like a dozen times. So, yeah. So to end this review, overall, I don't think I gave it an overall score yet, but yeah, I thought it was a good game. Do I think it's game of the year? I don't believe so. I can think of a few games better that came out this year. Zelda's obvious, but I can see this game being nominated for sure, but I don't know about winning. So anyway, I'm gonna give it a solid 8 out of 10. Again, the main issue for me, my biggest complaint is that it's missing a few core RPG elements like gearing, the party system, and the stats. It just doesn't exist in the game. I think labeling this as an RPG is kind of disingenuous because of that. It's still a good game regardless, but that's the amazing reason why I scored it an 8 out of 10. I think the game's slightly too long. It could be extremely cutscene heavy at times. It borders the line of being an interactive movie rather than a video game, and I understand the complaints about people saying that stuff, especially if you've never played an FF game before. Side quests are a chore until the very end. Most of them are just fetch quests and are a pain. Sometimes I audibly groaned a few times when I saw them pop up because I just really didn't want to do them anymore. I really just wanted to go with MSQ, but I knew they would pay off eventually. They usually always do in FF games if you keep up with them. And there's just way too many QTEs for me. It detracts from the action. I know most people don't really mind it, and I don't either when it's like used every now and then, but to me it's definitely not used every now and then in this game. It's pretty much in almost every cutscene. So yeah, these are probably the main issues I have with the game. Again, if it wasn't for the gearing, party, stat system, I think I would have given this either a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. So yeah. Thanks for listening or watching the video. Let me know in the comments what you think about the game. If you had any of the same issues I did, or maybe something I forgot to mention. Don't forget to like if you like the video. It helps me out a lot. Let me know what people like to watch and what people don't like to watch. And don't forget to subscribe if you're not already. Thanks for all the recent subs. Sorry for the lack of videos recently. This game and other things were taking up a lot of my time. Anyway, that'll do for me. Adios, boys.